And good morning, everybody. Welcome to Train of Thought on 92.3 The Train. Our phone number, 301-334-4272 or 301-334-3800, the numbers to call this morning. Full plate today. One of the things we want to talk about, of course, is the school situation. I have some thoughts on that and the meeting held the other evening. And also, I have an invitation out there for the youngsters, not anymore, the graduates of the class of 2012. You want to make a call and tell me how you feel going into this world, what you think about your county, your state, your nation, the world that you're about to go into. Well, we certainly would love for you to call in and give us a piece of your mind and let us know what was good and what was bad about your experience in growing up in Garrett County. Once again, our numbers this morning, 301-334-4272, 301-334-3800, the numbers to call. And we'll get to the point of the show called My Monologue right now. And those of you who listen to this program know full well that over the past several months, in addition to presenting news interviews and encouraging conversation on the issues of the day, I've stood strongly on one issue. As recently as last week, I've asked you become more involved in the process. Show up at the meetings. Let your feelings be known. I have said this is the way that the people that are elected to represent you will know how you feel. And Delegate Wendell Beitzel, I asked him that question last week because, by all means, he wants to hear from you. So, and I think at least most of the elected officials feel that way. Wednesday evening, I attended the Board of Education special meeting. I guess about 200 people showed up with the same impression I did, that we were going to hear the board either vote to reconsider the closing of Dennett Road and Kitzmiller Elementary Schools or announce they would not be reconsidering it. I think everyone understood that the school board was truly between a rock and a hard place at the end of April. They had to play the cards they had in their hands, and if you ask me to trust that the state of Maryland was without question going to come through with the stop-loss funding, I would have had the same doubts. Wednesday, though, didn't have that uncertainty about it. In fact, the board not only had $500,000 in additional county dollars in hand, it had the additional state stop-loss funding of over $1.1 million guaranteed. Interim Superintendent Sue Wagner had prepared 4 options for the board to consider. The problem is the board did not consider them in public session. After a 2.5-hour closed session, the board convened before the assembled throng in the Southern Middle School cafeteria. Mrs. Wagner presented one option, and then the board retreated to closed session once again. After another half hour, the board returned to publicly adjourn. I've been all about open meetings in all of my life, and one of my first skirmishes in this town resulted when I wouldn't leave the outside of a sewer meeting at Oakland Town Hall 30 years ago. Those inside figured out I could still hear what was going on and were plenty upset because they had to adjourn to an un-air-conditioned room in the middle of summer just so I couldn't hear them. Wednesday night, I felt the public was shut out of their right to see government working. So I called the Attorney General's office yesterday. Ironically, they had just finished posting a course on the Maryland Open Meetings Law online. The lawyer I spoke with understandably could not advise whether it was a violation or not, but the online course starts with these 2 quotes. Quote, while the act does not afford the public any right to participate in the meeting, it does assure the public the right to observe the deliberative process and the making of decisions by the public body at open meetings. It is, therefore, the deliberative and decision-making process in its entirety which must be conducted in meetings open to the public, since every step of the process, including the final decision itself, constitutes the consideration or transaction of public business. That is a quote from the Maryland Court of Appeals, which is the highest court in the state. The Court of Appeals has also voiced its approval of this statement of the Supreme Court of Florida, and this is in the opening page of that training course that I mentioned. One purpose of the government in the Sunshine Law was to prevent at non-public meetings the crystallization of secret decisions to a point just short of ceremonial acceptance. Rarely could there be any purpose to a non-public pre-meeting conference except to conduct some part of the decisional process behind closed doors. That statute should be construed so as to frustrate all evasive devices. What that means is don't get any ideas that you should be doing this behind closed doors. Wednesday evening's agenda of the Board of Education played out just like what is referred to in that quote. Before you come down too hard on the school board, the current school board, let me also advise you that the Board of Education agendas have followed similar forms for over 3 decades. I've been covering the news here. They convene, they go into closed session, and then they return after an hour or two to tend to the public agenda. I think the people on the board are good people, but the system has been set up for years not to be transparent. To be sure, there are plenty of items involving the thousands of students and hundreds of employees that need to be private because they are specific to individuals, and the law takes that into account. What you cannot do is say, okay, we're going to talk about Johnny Johnson here, and then the rest of the meeting can be behind closed doors too. That, according to the person I talked to with the Attorney General's office, is the current thought and the proper interpretation of that. Back to the thought. The decision about options on how to spend state money is a time to open the doors, not close them. What's worse, dozens of Garrett Countyans made the trip to secure that money under the impression that it would save their schools. I talked to supporters of both Kitzmiller and Dennett Road the other night. They feel that they were used. They thought if they could convince the legislature to pass the stop-loss bill or get that funding through, their schools could live for another year. I was there the night the vote came down to close the schools. The rationale given was a financial one, that there wasn't enough money to keep the schools open and that they had a legal responsibility to balance the budget. And the night the vote was taken at the end of April, that was true. But now the money that could have been gotten has been gotten, and the goalposts have been moved. Nearly all of the public input over the past 5 months is focused on reasons not to close the designated schools. If there's going to be a different 5-year plan and a different rationale, there should be time for ample consideration. That means whatever other recommendations Mrs. Wagner produced deserve at least a public airing, and that did not happen Wednesday night. I'll go one step further. If you are a public official, you have to trust the public. At the end of all this, it's still very possible that Dennett Road and Kitzmiller schools will need to be closed. But you have to conduct the process in the correct manner. The people deserve that. Well, there's my train of thought this morning as we open up the show. And your thoughts are also welcome as well. 301-334-4272, 301-334-3800, the numbers to call. The lines are open, and we would love to hear your thoughts. And if you want to take issue with what I have said, I'm open. I put myself out there so you can either agree with me or you can disagree with me. Again, at the end of the day, it could be the proper decision, but you have to arrive at the decision in the proper manner. That's why we have an open government, or we're supposed to have open government. And I also want to reiterate that the Board of Education agenda has been conducted this way for years. That doesn't mean they've made all these decisions behind closed doors and then come out and done a cursory vote. But what it does mean is that the way it has been set up goes back to the days when the school board was an appointed school board, even before it was an elected school board. Now, I think it's doubly important for those folks to come out and be more responsive to the public, because before, if you were, and this goes back almost 30 years as well, before the governor appointed the school board and they were served at his pleasure. Right now, the school board members, county commission members, everybody that is elected serves at the pleasure of the public. It's important to respond to the public in that way. 301-334-4272, 301-334-3800, the numbers to call. It's Train of Thought on 92.3 The Train. I'm Paul Mullen reporting.